is an exciting
This is
day.
amazing. I want him to put the house lights up so we can see all your cute faces.
First of all, I just want to shout out because all of you wonderful men and women, mostly women, who've come here to see Savannah, you're in for a treat. But what is really touching me is there are a lot of people from NBC here who have heard Savannah's story, and guess what they did? They came again tonight. She's got you got your parents
Mom
who are here.
friends right here.
Yeah, we've got
Grace
a whole
moms,
group.
Packer moms, yeah.
So we just want to first of all say thank you. This is such a big day for me to be sitting with you today, Savannah, because I remember back in the day, it was many, many, many months ago, Savannah was writing essays, and you were saying, I'm not sure what this is, but would you read that? And this was something you were sort of reluctant to put out there. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I am the last person who thought I would be writing a book about anything, let alone my faith, of all things. But I was given the opportunity, and instead of my usual no, I have a job, I wake up in the middle of the night, I had 2 kids, like I'm not looking for extra credit. When somebody came to me, an editor, and said, would you ever want to write about your faith? I was on my way to no when I said, maybe. That sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And this is the subject that I'm actually most passionate about, and I might have something to say. So I decided to try. And that was when I first whispered it to you. Hoda and I have a thing, it's really like therapy every morning from approximately 6:40 to 6:59. And we talk about everything.
Yeah.
And the control room producers are like, oh, sorry to interrupt and sorry that happened in your childhood, but if we do have a tease it for WNBC at 7 o'clock. Am I making that up?
She's
no.
Totally on the money.
100%. We're like crying.
Yeah.
And then anyway, so it was in this vein that I said to Hoda one day, I said, you know, I got an offer to write a book about my faith, and I don't know, it's, you know, and she's like, send me your stuff, send it to me. So I would start to write, and I would send it to Hoda. I would send it to Hoda before I sent it to my mom, before it was half done. And she'd say, send me another, send me another. And as I doubted, Hoda was standing there as only she can with her 2 giant pom-poms saying, of course you're gonna do this. Of course there's a book. You're doing this. It's not even a question. And so because of your encouragement, if you like the book, you're welcome. If you don't, it's Hoda's fault. Because you're the big reason, big reason that I'm here.
Savannah's one of these people who has unique thoughts. You know, often I feel like when you talk with someone or you hear advice, it's something that you've heard before. I've always thought this about you. What you put out into the world is unique. It's your own thing. So when you are going to put it in this book, first of all, I was dying to know, like, what's the title going to be of this book? So this, you came in, I still remember you go, I've got the title. I think I've got it. Mostly what God does.
Yeah.
So what's the answer to that?
Well, the rest of the sentence is mostly what God does is love you. And I wish that had been a line that I wrote, but it isn't. There's a scholar named Eugene Peterson who was incredible, a theologian and really a poet, and he did something totally audacious. He knew that back in the old days, in Jesus' time, he didn't speak in some posh or educated dialect, but that he spoke in the common conversational street language of his time. And working from that, Eugene Peterson, this scholar, decided to translate the Bible from English into plain English. Not slang, but not slang, as I wrote in the book. And so I would read it from time to time because especially when if you find yourself reading something and you're like, this, I don't even understand what this means, it's kind of impenetrable, I would go and look at this book called The Message, that's what he wrote. This is the Bible translated in regular language, and read the verse. And I came across a verse, and it's, I don't know the original verse by heart, but you would recognize it if you're a Sunday school goer. I see you there, yep. Shifting in your pew right now, wondering when the Dunkin' Donuts visit will come. You know, anyway, the verse, the retranslation was, watch what God does, and you do it too. The way children learn proper behavior from their parents. Mostly what God does is love you. It hit me like a thunderbolt. You know, I don't know about you, but for me, most of my life, even though I grew up in the faith, I've always kind of wondered what God thought of me, of my choices. I haven't lived a perfect life. I'm certainly not holding myself up as any kind of model or example. And so I've often wondered, what does God think about me? What does he think about my choices? Have I ruined my life? Have I just irredeemably taken the wrong steps? And the answer I have come to learn through life is mostly what God was doing that whole time was loving you. And it's not a throwaway line. I don't mean this as some happy talk, because God actually knows you. You know, this is my belief, is that he has ultimate credibility in stating that he loves you, because he actually knows you. All those things that you like about yourself, and yes, the things you don't. But mostly what he does is love you anyway. And not because of who you are, but because of who he is.
Do you see what I'm talking about right now? Do you understand what I'm saying right now? You know when you're a kid, you were brought up in the faith, and I think about this a lot in my lifetime. It's like there are certain beliefs I have, and I wonder, do I have them because they're in me, or do I have them because ever since I was a little kid, my parents repeated them? Are these my morals, or are these my parents' morals that I'm carrying on? And sometimes when you rake through, you find out like, oh, this is what I believe. When did you realize on your own as Savannah, like, this is actually what I believe?
I think this has been the whole process that is still ongoing. You know, I write about it in the book. I grew up in a very churchy family. My parents, in a Baptist church, we went to church like 5 times a week. Sunday morning, Sunday school, then church service, go home for lunch, Dunkin' if you're lucky, choir practice at 4, Sunday evening services, and Wednesday night services. So it was a lot. That's how it, and so I grew up with this faith. And, you know, I love that upbringing. You know, there were good parts of it and hard parts of it, but I don't regret having that upbringing. But for everyone, whether it's faith or some other value that you feel you've gotten from your family, at some point you have to decide whether it belongs to you. And so faith was always a part of me. My sister, there were 5 of us, Guthries, my mom, my dad, my big sister, my big brother, and me. But my sister used to say God was the 6th member of our family. And I loved how she said that, because what she meant was like God was present and relevant and in the topic of conversation in ordinary struggles. And so I carried that with me. But I also think because of my particular upbringing, I had a lot of guilt and shame. And, you know, it was a lot of like, am I going to heaven or hell? You know, do I have salvation? If I messed up, if I cussed, isn't that hilarious? I have like one of the worst, foulest mouths you could ever.
Horrifying,
like, still.
seriously.
I actually think I cussed in this book.
You did, one time.
Yeah, I did. The rest they took out. But anyway, yeah, so it took me a long time to come to know who God actually is. I think that especially when you're distant or you're not really like focused on it, it's really easy to conflate God with particularly any authority figure in your life. And it's easy to kind of look away, especially when you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not acting the way I should, or I did something I'm not proud of. You imagine this scolding taskmaster who is, you know, you're coming in for a beat down, and you think that that's God. And when I finally kind of came face to face with who God actually was, not when I did well, but when I didn't, when I disappointed myself, when my heart was broken and my setbacks were crushing to me, that's when I found out that God was loving me this whole time, and you. And that's the message of the book that I just felt like I had to share. I just felt like I had something good to say about God, and I wanted to say it, even though it's totally scary and terrifying. And maybe weird.
It's none of those things. I think for anybody here who's lost a loved one, or who's been through a divorce and felt like kind of on your knees, you know what it feels like. And I think often it either makes people lean into their faith more, or it makes people say, where were you? You know, how could you have taken him? Your dad died when you were just a teenager, and I know that was one of those pivotal moments. It created this you that we see before us. But tell us about how God played in that moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, first of all, I of course remember going through that. Because I grew up in this, very kind of religious background, my friends all knew that, and they'd say, I was 16 years old when my father died suddenly and unexpectedly. And my friend said, well, what do you think about God now? Or how can you believe in God? And I remember saying very distinctly, well, I can't lose him now. Like, I can't lose my father and God. It wasn't a choice in that moment to not believe. But what I actually think faith is, everyone has their different struggles and wrestles, I think, with faith in some way or some form. But for me, the particular challenge has never been, does God exist? I've always felt that's not an obstacle for me for belief. I believe that God exists. I have doubted and wondered whether God was good and kind and loving and well-intentioned. Anybody who looks around this world or surveys their own disappointments might ask that question from time to time. Where is God? And do you care? And how can this world be so full of suffering? Why do good people suffer? There are no good answers to that whatsoever. I try to wrestle with them in the book.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I don't have those answers, or I would be charging you double, if not triple, for this book. But this is a long-winded way of saying that, and you said, did you struggle with your faith? Did you not? Yes. Yes, in the sense of that I believe that doubt and faith are not opposites. I think doubt is an aspect of faith. In a way, questioning God, wrestling with God, is an exercise of faith. To me, apathy and indifference are far more egregious and certainly more distant from faith. I don't think there's anything in Scripture or any text that would suggest that God is not ready, willing, and eager to engage these questions. In fact, it's shot through the Scriptures, people questioning God and him answering. And so I've come to accept and let my doubt and my faith coexist with God as opposed to without him. You're cracking me up.
Sometimes when we are
vodka. I kid. Sorry.
You're crazier. Sometimes when we're at a crossroads, we're asking for guidance, and sometimes, I feel like, is that me talking to myself, or am I getting some kind of divine guidance? Am I being put on a path, or am I being spoken to? Yeah. So how do you figure out the difference between those two? And have you ever had that feeling where you're like, yeah, he's actually talking to me right now?
This is one of the most fascinating and perplexing questions of faith. And I wrote a whole chapter on it called God Speaks Our Language. And, that is the question. Am I just self-soothing? Is it just... a lot of people say it really kind of glibly, like, I feel the Lord told me to get a venti today with extra whipped cream, and so it shall be, But what I have to say, maybe a time or two in my life have I felt I heard God's voice. Kristen Chenoweth is a person of great faith, and she said once, and I loved how she put this, she said she feels sometimes impressions. She said it's like a handprint on her heart. And that to her is what God's voice is to her. But the way I kind of feel I know it's God is if it's saying something I would never think and never say. That's why it's so noticeable. It's not something I necessarily want to hear. It can be something really surprising. I write about a moment in my life that was really hard, and I was kind of down on my knees, like you say, and I was praying every day, desperately, week after week, month after month, maybe more than a year. Rescue me, deliver me, help me. I felt I was trapped, and there was no way out. And I was in despair. And one day, I was writing in my journal, probably some version of this same prayer, and I heard a voice in my head, I am rescuing you. And it was so shocking and surprising. And it was definitely not self-generated, because it was the last thing that I felt in that moment. I didn't understand it. It was as though I said, what? And I wasn't sure even in that moment, what it meant, but it was so, it forced me to contend with it because it was so unexpected and so opposite of the moment I was really in. And so I always remembered it. And I can't say it even made me feel that much better right in the moment. I just thought, that's odd. But I never forgot it. And years later, with the benefit of perspective and time, I came to understand what I think God was saying to me in that moment, which was, this moment, Savannah, this pain and this sadness that you're in, this is my rescue. See, this is the path I'm making for you out. Because otherwise, you might just stay in this space forever. My rescue is calling you into a better place, even though it hurts right now. And even if I didn't quite understand what he meant in that moment when I think God said, I am rescuing you, at a minimum, I knew he was saying, I'm here. I didn't forget. I'm right here. And that was probably one of the most meaningful moments in my life where I really felt I heard a voice.
You speak so beautifully in this book about how becoming a mom and the bond you have with Vale and Charlie was something that made you understand the bond that God had with you. I thought that was such a profound chapter. I was, going through a few bumps with my kids and with some other issues, and I read that chapter, and there was something about that chapter that just touched me so deeply, because I don't know that I'd ever thought of it in that way. Explain how parenthood changed you or showed you that part.
Well, first of all, the chapter is called Like a Mother, which I just want to say that it's almost profane, and I got it through the editor. So I hope you can see that the book, it's not heavy theology. I think it's deep, but I hope it's a little irreverent and funny too, and bite-sized and accessible. But so when I had my babies, it was a love that I could not possibly have ever fathomed. And you and I both came to have children late in life. And I don't know, in a way, I feel it makes it all the sweeter because we never forget. Like, we're never going to get over this blessing. We just can't believe it happened to us, but it did. And even on those days that they're driving us insane, I think we both try to find that moment where we're like, oh, we prayed for this. We were on our knees praying for this. Anyway, when I think about, when you have been around and you've lived a life, you get some scar tissue, and you've had some heartbreaks a few dozen times, and you can have kind of a tough exterior. Even if you're friendly and warm on the outside, you can be kind of tough and a little invulnerable. And when I had my children, that was over, because I was totally vulnerable to them. I love them more than life itself, and if anything happens to them, I could not fathom it. It's the old saying, to have a child is to have your heart go walking outside your body. There's nothing truer ever written as far as I'm concerned. So loving them and realizing how I loved them became such a revelation to me. Motherhood is like a revelation, physically, emotionally, intellectually, but also spiritually, because I realized the way I love my kids, it's the only truly unconditional love I think I have ever really experienced. And the way we delight in them, the way we relish their milestones and just take joy over their accomplishments, and we just delight in them. And also the way that their heartbreaks crush us, and how we fear for them and breathe every breath with them. Suddenly I realized that's how God feels about me. Wow. Like, if you really let that in, it's profound and it's transformative. And I'm not making that up. I mean, this isn't, as again, if I haven't given my disclaimer yet, I'm not a theologian. I'm not a biblical scholar. I did go to Vacation Bible School, but and church camp. But this is the Bible. Throughout Scripture, God is referred to the Father, and we, his children. The parent metaphor is his. And once you really grasp onto that, and you think about your kids, and you think about how you feel, and how that warms you up, and your love and care and joy, and then you want for 1 second just allow yourself to think that God could delight in you, that he could adore you, not just love you because he has to, but like you. This is the thrust of the book, is if you could let that in. I don't know if you can believe that, but if you could believe it, if you could absorb it even momentarily, you would be changed. And everyone around you would be changed. And I think love like that cannot be contained. It's contagious. And so then you start to spread it around. And that is essentially my faith and my philosophy, is that is God's plan. That's always been his plan. This world of suffering and sadness is not the ultimate ending. We haven't seen the ending yet. And we don't understand, and we'll never understand. We don't even have the capacity to understand why the world is the way it is. But in the meantime, we are to be loved, and then like little deputies, agents of love, we're to go spread that around. And that might not change the whole wide world in one fell swoop, but it sure could change one person and change you. And if we all did it, well, then that might just change the world. And I think humans were always God's plan A, until his kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven.
I should also point out, I've read this book a couple of times, and the beauty of the book is that it's filled with her humor that you're witnessing right now, and all this great wisdom. But I think whether you have Savannah's faith or another faith or no faith at all, the book has these it's about life and living, and it touches you in a profound way. There was a whole thing that you did on purpose, which I really liked. And this is what you say. You say, speaking of God, he gives us a mission and a meaning, more than wealth, more than fame, more than knowledge or wisdom, more than beauty, more than praise. That's what we crave, purpose. God gives us a profound, divine purpose to love each other. I thought that was so beautifully said, and loving each other is an important purpose. And I wondered if through writing this, you've discovered yours, what your purpose is.
I think I kind of did, and then I wrote about it, and then I was like backspacing because it's so embarrassing. And then also my mom read it, and she was like, "Do you have to put that?" You know. Then people might expect it. I was like, well, I don't know. So, I mean, I will say just to pick up on what Hoda said, I mean, it's strange to be here in New York City talking about these things. Thank you for coming and having an open heart. But I don't expect, and I know that everyone comes from a different place. And you might have this faith or another faith. You may actually have an aversion to faith because of the way that you grew up. And I get that. And I think this message is for anyone and everyone. And actually, one of the neatest things that has happened since the book came out is that I've heard from all different people of different faiths, you know, truly. And they've said, oh, you know, this kind of resonated with me, or this spoke to me, or I don't believe in God, but I liked it. And so I'm kind of hoping that what's written here is universally appealing and relevant. And that's really my hope. It's the aperture is supposed to be wider. You know, the arms are outreached. It's not narrow. And as for purpose, yes, I did. A long time ago, I write about this in the book. Now, look, this is like the Cliff's Notes. You don't even have to read it. I'm giving you the highlights here. But a long time ago, I was listening to Oprah's masterclass, probably because Hoda told me to.
Yeah, she's got a great one.
Do you know what Hoda does on her off time when the rest of us are watching, like, Vanderpump Rules? Or worse, Below Deck? Hoda watches commencement speeches and reads inspirational books. She does. It's amazing. And So she was like, oh, she always is telling me, oh, this, and she said, oh, you got to listen to Oprah's masterclass. So I did. And Oprah was talking about her purpose. And the thing about purpose is it's not like, this is my job. You know, my purpose is to tell important stories at work, or my purpose is as a mom, my purpose is to raise good humans, or my purpose is to build houses for the poor. Like, those are all very wonderful, great purposes. But my theory is, like, your purpose is, it's where your kind of specific God-given talent meets up with a need that's out there in the world. And it's this beautiful alchemy. And it's something that's specific, that's just you, you know? And it could be applied in 100 different ways. But there's something about you, you know, you're like, I'm good at talking. I'm good at cheerleading. I'm wonderful at art. I'm a great writer. Whatever it is, like, you take that thing that you know is your thing, and you all know that you have something that is your thing. Yeah. You know you do. Admit it to yourself. You're really good at that thing, or it gives you joy to do it. That's part one of your purpose. And now apply it out to something greater than yourself. So when I was writing this book and I kind of made that formula, like I even drew it like a equation, they let me draw pictures. I wrote that heart, and I did like these diagrams, and the editor's like, I don't really get this. And I'm like, well, I sent it back again. Try, maybe you'll like it more now this time. But anyway, I wrote about, like, well, what would my purpose be? My purpose isn't to be on TV or to, you know, even to tell important stories. And I love being a wife and a mom, but that's not it either. And I write about, you know, being a big talker and being kind of a blabbermouth and loving to write and loving to speak and explain. And I found in writing this that I think the one word for my purpose is to share. I think I'm supposed to share. I think I'm supposed to share all that I have. And that's a very multifaceted kind of call to action. It means share your resources. Share, give away. Yeah, it's a challenge. Don't hoard, share. And it's also share what you know. And it's also open your heart, share your love. Don't be afraid. So that's what I came to through writing this book. And that was really the last chapter. And it's funny because it was like, oh, that's what this is all about. Score one for God. Guess you knew that before I did.
You know what's funny? I don't know if you remember this. You may. We were at an event together. It was a long time ago. And Savannah was talking to a group of girls. And she was saying to them, if you have a wish or a dream or something that's sitting on your heart, say it out loud. You don't have to scream it from the mountaintops, but you can say it to your best friend. Or if you don't feel comfortable, you can whisper it to yourself in the mirror. And once you say something and you put words out there in life, all of a sudden the universe kind of starts cooperating with you. And for me, it was when I was thinking about having kids, but thought it was too weird for someone my age to do that. And the minute I spoke the words out loud, and I said, you know, to a friend of mine, look, she said, well, we never wanted kids. And I said, well, actually, I kind of did, but I was afraid to say it because it's like me saying I want to be an astronaut. And I remembered when the words came out of my mouth, everywhere I looked, there was a sign. Sandra Bullock. I Googled her age. How old is Sandra Bullock? Oh my God, she's my age. I was like, Sandra Bullock. And then I turned left and I turned right, and everywhere I looked. So this idea of saying out loud your purpose and not just keeping it inside, because I think a lot of people in here probably have a secret something that you're like, I could never, but just to speak it into existence.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I took from you.
Even if it's, I mean, the purpose thing is kind of deeper and wider and maybe for all seasons. And, you know, I also wonder, you know, maybe your purpose can change. This is my purpose as of the writing of this book. You know, it could change. Maybe I'll become a folk singer, which we don't know that won't happen. I mean, we do know, but we don't.
No, we actually don't know that
no,
it
well,
won't
okay,
happen.
so stop. Oh my gosh,
could
don't
go
take
on.
the bait. Okay, but anyway, but I always say this too, because I experienced this myself when I was coming up in local news, and, you know, I didn't even admit to myself what my secret dream was because I was sure I couldn't get it, and I thought it was embarrassing that I even could have the thought to want to do it. And so I had this moment in time where I had worked in local news for 5 or 6 years, and it was time to either go on to try to get to that bigger market, because that's, especially back then, that's kind of how it was. The trajectory is to start in a tiny town, move up to a medium-sized town, then try to large town, then hope the networks see you and you're on your way. But that, it was like, you know, it's like a pyramid that's just getting narrower and narrower and narrower, you know? And so I knew how hard it was, and I knew, like, I didn't know if I could even get to that bigger market, you know, Phoenix or wherever, Chicago. So I decided to apply to law school. Because I was interested in the law, and it was the time of like the O.J. Simpson trial and stuff. I was really into court TV, and I was like, this is cool, you know, and I covered trials as a reporter. So I decided to take the LSATs, the law school entrance exam, and I thought, well, my contract's not up for a few years, but I'll just have this in my back pocket, you know, like in case I can't get a job, which is what I really thought. I'm never going to get those big jobs because I didn't look right. My hair was terrible. I mean, just all the things. And I didn't have the right clothes, I didn't sound good, but so I just didn't think I could make it. I thought, I'll have this as my backup plan. Well, lo and behold, in this crazy turn of events that I still quite can't explain, all the deadlines to apply for law school that year had passed. And I got a letter out of the blue in like February. This is 1999, hashtag old person. And it was a letter from Georgetown Law, which would have been my dream school, because I had been an intern on Capitol Hill, and I saw Georgetown's campus, and I was like, wow. You know, I was a girl from Arizona. I went to school in my hometown. I lived at home. It was like, this was just another world. Anyway, I got this letter from Georgetown Law saying, the application deadline has passed, but if you get your application in by March 15th, we invite you to apply.
Oh my gosh.
And I, to this day, and I've actually asked the admissions director, who's still there, the same guy, I'm like, why did you send that letter? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, like what letter? It's like, but it's, you know, all they had from me was the LSAT score and my GPA from the University of Arizona, which were like, they were good, but not like, you know, prodigy level. Anyway, I got this letter. I decided, wow, I'm going to throw together this application. So I did it in 2 weeks. I sent it off to Georgetown Law. Lo and behold, I get a letter back, you're in. So now I've got 9 months more left on my TV contract. I'm not sure I want to be done with TV at all. But now I've got this once-in-a-lifetime chance to go to Georgetown Law, not apply anywhere else. So it was killing me, because I'm like, what do I do? You know, it's like, do I go to law school and take this big chance? Or do I stay in TV, because I'm not sure I'm done with TV, and I don't know, but then if I left, I can't. So I'm hemming and hawing in like in the ruminating circle, you know? It's like, my job, my kids, my job, my kid, you know, like that whole thing where you're like, what? And I met with, this is getting somewhere, I promise you. I sat down with someone that was kind of a mentor to me. He was a reporter at the local station, and he said, Savannah, he heard this whole hemming and hawing. He said, think big. And I don't know why, in that moment, even though it was kind of a bumper sticker slogan, I knew exactly what he meant. He meant, stop giving yourself all the reasons why, if you do this, you can't do that, and then that door will be foreclosed forever, and then if you don't make the right decision right now, it's all law. He said, think big.
Think big. And
I knew what he meant. He meant I had to tell myself what my biggest dream was. Go home and admit it to yourself. If you had your biggest dream, if you thought as big as you could possibly think, Savannah, and you're not going to tell anyone except for yourself, what would it be? What little dream are you hiding away there that you won't even whisper out loud in the mirror? And my dream was, I would like to be a national legal correspondent for one of the networks. And when I said it to myself, then I knew what to do next. I thought, well, then I guess I should go to law school.
My God.
And not worry about, well, but then you didn't do TV and you're out of this or that. It was just like the next right step. I always say to young folks, like, if you know where you're going, if you whisper your little dream to yourself, you know, you don't have to go telling everyone, I'm going to be the next Oprah. Like, no, none of us are, you know? But like, whatever the thing is, tell it to yourself, and then you'll know what direction to go in, because you have a destination. Whether you get there is not even the point. It's not even the point. The point is to know where your hopes and your dreams are, and then take a step in that general direction. And that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You know, whisper it if you must. And whether it's your purpose or a career dream, you got to tell the truth to yourself. Don't squash it in your own internal dialogue. Like, the world will be here to squash it for you. Right? So just at least tell yourself the truth and believe in yourself. Who knows if it works out or not? It's not going to work out if you don't even tell yourself.
And think about what happened to that girl who made that decision. You were sitting in a seat at the network, there is no higher place to be. That road, getting into that seat, was not an easy road. And back to your faith, but that played in. There were many moments that you and I shared together. There was a moment that Savannah and I started anchoring together. It was after that other chapter that happened. You know the one. Anyway, there was a moment where Savannah and I stood in your dressing room just before we were about to go on air on our very first day together, and it was terrifying. Wasn't it?
Yes,
do you remember?
Of course.
And we held hands in your dressing room. We said a prayer. We were crying because we were like, how are we going to make it through this thing? This is one of the most difficult things we'd have to do professionally together. And I don't know if I've really talked about it with you, but what was that? Just describe what that was like from your point of view.
Just that we were so afraid and
Yep.
sad and conflicted and confused. And, you know, it was a shock, and it really happened so fast, you know, like that. We didn't have any time to collect our thoughts or process, and we were thrown together. And, you know, that first morning, Hoda, you were there for me, you know. You weren't the co-anchor of the show first. The morning we're talking about, and I just was like, I can't sit there alone.
Yeah, because
and Hoda said, I'll go with you. Yeah. And that's why I said, this is cool. We got inducted into the Hall of Fame together. And what I said then, and I mean so deeply, is like, I would hold hands and go anywhere with you. It's true. And that's what we had to do that day, and I think we do it every day, you know?
We're tired.
Yeah. We're so tired. This is like a midnight rave in Ibiza for us.
Oh my God, we are on a bender. We're on a bender. We really are. We're never out this late.
Never.
We can't believe we're here.
Yeah.
It's like so crazy. Let's talk about something else.
Okay, what should we talk about?
I'll tell you what. Let's talk about Mike for 1 second, because
Yeah.
Mike is here, your dear husband. Where are you, Mike? I just want to say that I was at Savannah's book party yesterday, and I got to witness the love between these two. We had a beautiful book party, and Mike was speaking about his wife, and then Savannah spoke about this incredible guy, and I got to watch their 2 kids bear witness to this moment. Like, think about a time when your parents declared their love for one another in front of a group. And I watched these 2 young kids. I literally was watching Charlie and Vale looking like Mom and Dad. It was just such a beautiful moment. And Mike, Mike has been on this journey with you every step of the way. And he's here again tonight.
My husband is the most incredible person. He's the smartest, the funniest, the kindest, the most forgiving, the most loving. He is the person I want to be. And the greatest thing about him is he's kind of a huge deal, actually. And everyone I know that's like anyone is because of him, because they all love him, because he is a wise and generous counsel. And everyone who ever wants advice or has any issue or problem, they go to him because he's calm and kind and loving and human and above all wise and always generous with his time. And I get to be married to him. And he, you know, when we met, like, I was just I was a mess, but that's another story. But you know, I was just a 3rd string reporter at the White House for NBC, and he was a big, big deal in Washington. And there's been no one behind me more and more proud and more saying, go for it. And even right up until this moment of this book, which is, it's a little unorthodox to say, like, I'm going to write a book about my Christian faith, and I could see a lot of people say, like, that's wonderful, but, might be kind of weird, or who knows how it might be received, or that's just so personal, and you're writing. And not once did he said, great. Yeah. He said, wonderful. And I'm so, so, so blessed to have him. And our kids are blessed to have him as their dad.
All right, we're going to take some audience questions, y'all. Isn't this the best convo? Okay, here we go. Okay, Savannah, advice for a 24-year-old girl far away from home, trying to make it big in TV in New York City while staying close to God.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
That's a good one.
I gave you all my good career advice with the think big routine, which I really believe. It's hard sometimes. Yeah. I write about that a lot. I definitely haven't always been so out there and forward with my faith, even though if you know me, no one's like shocked about this, but, especially growing up, I just wanted to blend in general. I didn't want to stand out of the crowd at all for any reason, let alone for my faith. But I think the most important thing is to try to stay in touch with it yourself and your own quiet moments, and find a way or practices that ground you and remind you. And it doesn't have to be necessarily the ones you might have grown up with, like going to church or doing a Bible study or whatever, memorizing verses, which all of those things are incredible and give far more than they require. But just anything, a meditation, singing a hymn that you remember, just make space. To quote the award-winning Hoda podcast called Just make space. But here's the thing I'd really tell you, and this is really the story of this book. Whether or not you feel that you're keeping in great touch with God or staying true to your soul in a way that you're proud of, God's loving you the whole time anyway. He's not going to say, well, where have you been all this time? Well, you made your bed, now lie in it. That's not what he says. Mostly what God does is love you. And I think when you know that, then even when you do have seasons of distance, whether it's because you're busy and you're 24 and you're trying to make it in this world, or because you're disappointed with God and you're sad and you're mad at him, so you're distant for that reason and you ice him out, it doesn't matter. God's opinion of you is not changing. His thoughts of you do not depend on your thoughts of him. His feelings towards you do not depend on your feelings of him. He loves you. That's the full, complete sentence. And just know that. And when you come back, he'll be there. It's like the prodigal son story in the Bible, which I love so much. And if you might know what it's about, you probably heard about it in Sunday school or something, if you went, where there were two sons, and they had a wealthy father, and they both had an inheritance. And one son was like righteous son, and stayed at home and did all the work and plowed the fields and made every right decision. And the other one took his inheritance right away, went off and squandered it in wild living, lost his money, laid with prostitutes, literally was living in squalor with pigs because he had nowhere else to go, and decided, I'm going to try to go back home because I'm living with, I have no other place, and I'll just go and ask my father for forgiveness. And I won't ask to live at home. I'll just ask for work, and I'll be one of the hired hands because I know I'm not a son anymore. And this is the part that makes me cry. It says in the scriptures, it says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and ran out and wrapped his arms around him. While he was still a long way off. So you don't have to be pious and perfect. While you're still a long way off, he's racing towards you. So that's my big message, I think.
Oh my God. Why are there no Kleenexes? Okay, anyway, what would you say to those who struggle with or don't have faith and wish they did?
Yeah, oh.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I say, come as you are. it's okay. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to struggle with faith. There's a lot of internal reasons. There's a lot of external reasons. And I think I said a little bit of this before, but I really don't think that, I don't consider doubt to be a sin. I think we should bring our doubts to God, or if you aren't even sure if there is a God, to say them out loud, to express them. I mean, if you're actively engaging with your questions, whether by yourself, with your friends, with books that you read, with anything, I put a lot of faith and confidence in God. I don't think anyone needs to be hammered over the head with it. I really don't. I think God actually, and the actual story shows a God of great restraint. And so I think just come with your questions, come as you are, come exactly who you are. God wouldn't want you to be anyone else. It's not irreverent or blasphemous to have questions. I know this, again, not because I'm making it up, but because the Bible itself is full of people, regular people, who cried and struggled and said, why have you forsaken me? Where are you, God? And that's how I know that it is okay to bring our questions, our passion. God is not asking for a perfect, flawless performance or stoicism. He's asking for our true, authentic selves. And as long as you're doing that, then I think you are on your road. And God will meet you while you're still a long way off.
Savannah, your advice for getting involved in the church or finding your people, because you
hard.
You were struggling with that.
Oh my gosh, for years and years. Even if I was like, my church attendance is spotty. I joke in the book, I'm like, a boozy brunch is a lot easier to find on a Sunday morning, you know? And even when I, from time to time, like in Washington or wherever, in Tucson, wherever I'd find a church that I liked, I was always like on the side, I'd go in and listen to the sermon and then dash out. And they're always like, go come, join this group or volunteer, blah, blah, blah. And I never did it because I was just embarrassed, and I just also kind of just wanted to be in my silo, you know? It was just personal, and just, I don't know, I was like kind of an introvert. I know, shocking, right? But I have to say that this church that I found in New York City, which if you're here, I think it's lovely. It's called Good Shepherd in Manhattan. It's downtown. Hoda's come with me many times.
Beautiful.
And it's an incredible mix of being kind of traditional and then also kind of a non-denominational, really welcoming, lovely. The music is beautiful, if nothing else. And Hoda's like, music is your language. Anyway, I started to go there, and then over time, you know, I think they asked me, would you want to write a prayer? And so I started to do that a little bit, and I came to know the pastors, and little by little. But I mean, even just in the last year, I did something for the church that I hadn't done in all the 10 years I've been there, which was, and I write about it actually, which was to help with communion, which was a really cool and profound experience. So look, I guess my point is like, if you can get out of your shell, and you can, I think you'll find in most churches a really welcoming and loving place. Like, it's a big part of most churches is to be a warm and welcoming place where anyone could feel home. But if you don't, that's okay too.
Yeah, I like how you write in the book about how you walked into one that was kind of stodgy, but still you took something.
There's always something.
Bits and pieces.
There's always something to get out of it. It might not be what you expected. You know, you might think the sermon's a real bore, or the people are weird or whatever, but like, open your eyes. There's usually something to get out of it. There's no wasted time with God, not in my opinion.
Okay, here's something from Alexa. She asks, how do you maintain your faith when you are struggling with something?
I guess I think now because I've been around a few dark moments, I think I just try to just bring it, you know, just try to bring my whole self. And my struggles with faith now are more struggles with my own inner disappointments with myself, you know, and when I do something or act in a way that I know is just, you know, I don't use the words that we would have used when I was a kid, you know, it was like a lot about like sin and hell and damnation and lack of salvation and all that. But now, actually at my church, they say this, and I really love it. Like, it's a really good definition of sin, which is anything that falls short of love, you know? And so for me, it's like just using that definition and then taking responsibility for it and bringing it to God, and then believing in this is where my faith really comes in, just believing that I'm forgiven and that God loves me anyway. Again, not because of who I am or my conduct, but because of him. And so that's, that's kind of my current struggles are more around things like that, actually. But I've had many, many years of where I felt abandoned by God, or just like, why can't this work out? Why is this I'm not asking for like a Corvette or, like fancy shoes. Like I want a family, I want kids. I want a good husband. Like, why was that? There were years and years where that did not happen for me. And it was a great struggle and a great challenge to my faith, because I thought that God would want to honor that blessing. And, well, he did. But he took his time. And also, my story is also of me getting impatient and taking matters kind of into my own hands and making some mistakes that really hurt, and that sucked. But guess what? God was still there. And I write in the book, you cannot write yourself out of your own destiny. You know how many times I ruined my life? Too many times to count. You know how many times I blew up my career? Too many times to count. But see, that's where faith comes in. And that perspective is so meaningful.
Okay, well, guys, this has been a beautiful conversation. I just want to say, number one, I know everyone in this room wants to be friends with Savannah right now, but I get to be friends. Okay, and some of your dear friends are here. This book is incredible. It's in the lobby, and I'm happy it is, because it's hard to get on Amazon anymore. It's really blowing up. It's called Mostly What God Does, Reflections on Seeking and Finding His Love Everywhere. You guys give it up for Savannah Guthrie!